Hello, I'm Baronesa Isabella Maria Vasquez de Granada y Cortes. I'm from the Shire of Mynnath Gwyn, which is in the Principality of Insula Draconis, which is part of the Great Kingdom of Drachenwald. Today I'm going to show you how to make a death's head wrapped button. Alright then, these are the things you're going to need to make a death's head button. You're going to need a template. I'll talk about those in a moment. You need a needle. It doesn't have to be too big an eye. A standard tapestry needle is fine. You need some wax to roughen up your template. You need a marker pen, a pair of scissors, some thread. I'd recommend number 8 crochet thread. Comes in lots of colours. You can do wonderful things with it. And I find that a paper clip, bulldog clip, or a clothes peg of some sort comes in very handy at the end. So let's put these to one side for now. These are 2 buttons that I made earlier using the wooden template. As you can see, they're quite thin. They've got a nice 4-part design on the front. The back is a little bit more untidy. We're not too worried about these gaps. These gaps occur a lot. So this is your basic death head button. You can do them on these flat templates, or you can use a straightforward plastic button. This has been made on a much thicker button with a far heavier thread, which means it works up easier, but it is a lot more chunky, as you can see. So the first thing to do is you need to mark your template. Now, your template, to make a standard death's head button, needs to have the cardinal points marked. So you want to be able to mark at the top and the bottom. And these want to be as accurate as you can for top and bottom. And then side to side, because these mark the points at which you're going to make your foundation cross. Once you've done that, you take your wax. This is straightforward beeswax, and you're just going to rub across the top. The reason for this is it makes the surface of the template a little bit stickier. Similarly, you want to go around the edges here. Now, this is a plywood wooden template. You can make them simply by cutting wood into a circle the size you need and then drill a hole in the middle. If you happen to have access to a 3D printer, then you can go to Thingiverse and look for wrapped thread button, and you will find some downloadable 3D printing templates for making these buttons. So we've now got a template which has been thoroughly waxed. What we do is, we don't need a needle at this point. What we're going to do is we're going to start wrapping our button. And the first thing we have to do is to create a foundation cross. And this requires you to start just to the left of the line. And you're going to put 5 rounds onto this. So this is 5 rounds or 5 wraps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this gives you a nice solid base. Then you turn it anti-clockwise and you want to do 5 wraps in the other direction. Okay, these want to be fairly close to each other, so I find it's quite useful to maybe push them in a little bit with my fingernail. Once you have the foundation cross done, you can start actually wrapping your button. When you start to wrap the button, go from holding it with the cross towards you, rotate it again anti-clockwise, and bring the working end of the thread up to the left of the foundation cross. So you see it's coming up here, and I'm going to put it again to the left of the bit above. Then I'm going to rotate through 90 degrees. I'm still holding on to the thread here at the back. I won't keep that for too long because it can get tangled up. So I've rotated it 90 degrees, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing again. So coming up on the left of the cross, down, and then rotate. Up on the left, down, and rotate. And this is all you need in terms of wrapping actions. Up to the left of the threads, down at the top, rotate. Up, down, rotate. Up, down, rotate. Now, this has got caught in the back, so I can cut it off. So that's not going to get caught in around as we're working. So I've come down there. That's where my thread is, so I want to come up here. Up, down, rotate. 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 And as you can see, as you do this, you start to build in the pattern towards the centre. Now, we don't have to worry that we're not going to meet at the corners, because the corners have been covered by our foundation cross. So all we need to do now is go round and round and round. It doesn't take too long to make these. Your first attempts are likely to be a little bit uneven, but as you get the hang of keeping the tension right, then you start getting something that looks a lot smoother. Now the interesting point, I'm going to go down there, and I'm just going to hold it. I'm just going to show you what's happening on the back. On the back, you can see you're building up just another square pattern. So the back is quite different to the front, and this is useful to know if you start going beyond simple death's head buttons and into thinking about weaving them and using multiple colours. So that's where I've just gone down. I need to rotate and come through. Now the death's head button was first seen around about the end of the 16th century. There are Tudor portraits, very late Tudor portraits, Elizabethan portraits of noblemen wearing doublets with this type of button on them, although they are far more common when you come into the 17th century. So by the time you get into the 1630s, these are a common style of button. Now they can become quite complex when you start working them with multiple threads and multiple colours, but this is the base version which you can then elaborate upon as you get the hang of wrapping. If you want to make them in two colours, you just use two different threads to wrap. And you may use a needle because you will want to weave in over and under. But this on its own produces a very elegant, simple button. Now, of course, if you wanted to go totally wild, you could do it in silk, but it will take a lot longer because, as you can see, this is building up quite nicely. Now you notice that occasionally I have to stop and just push the thread over a little. I'm having to be careful when I wrap that I keep the tension reasonably accurate, reasonably even, so that I don't end up with too many uneven bits. It's a little bit uneven there, but it's not too bad. The other thing is, when you rotate, don't hold the thread on the back, because otherwise the thread will become loose because you're holding it and then trying to pull it in a different direction. It's starting to really get close to the centre, and you can see how the wrap along the diamonds is giving you this nice shaded pattern. So we're coming through to the centre now, we're coming through to the end, and you may find that the thread wants to slip a bit. Also, don't worry too much if it's not absolutely perfect in terms of spacing. You can always pull it down a little. The thumbnail is very good for this, because ideally you want to have the same number of wraps in each direction. Realistically, it doesn't always work like that, but you can fudge it a bit if you need to. So there you go, there's a little bit of pressure to open that one up. I can see I'm going to need to open that up a little bit more, just so I can get more wraps in on this end. Okay, so clearly I've got a bit of a gap coming in there, but we can work with this. So I'm just going to keep going round, and I'm going to try to make sure that I get the crossover in the centre still centralised. So there we go, that gets it from that side. And in fact, I'm just going to put a final one in there. There we go. So that now is completed button. This is what it looks like on the back, and as you can see, we've got these little gaps, but no one's actually too worried about those. What I need to do now is I need to be able to cut the thread and then stitch it into the back. And this is where my clip is really useful, and it happens to be a magnetic one in this case. So it's attached to a tin. Now, you can use a bulldog clip, or you can use a clothes peg. Any of these will work, as long as it will hold everything while you cut the thread. So I'm going to take a bit of thread, probably about, I don't know, 30 centimetres, 12 inches of thread, and I'm going to thread that onto my needle. So the needle isn't too big, as you can see against that. It's a standard tapestry needle, so this thread should go through it without too many problems. There we go. Now, holding the thread again, because I don't want this to unwrap, I'm going to release this and I'm going to turn this over. As you can see, the thread comes up here. So if you want to be very careful with it, very picky, make sure you don't have to do any of those extra top and bottom wraps that I did, because that's what made this long diagonal. And you can find that it is a little bit fiddly to do this, but you can simply push your thread through and then catch it over the edges. So all you're doing is making sure that the thread doesn't come undone. Once you've got that, you can cut off the thread. And there you have a death's head button with the nice clear four-way pattern that we expect to see. Now, if you are stitching this onto a piece of clothing, then what you need to do is you stitch through the back several times, and then once you've got your traditional 9 stitches from here into the fabric, then you will wrap around the threads, producing a bar so that it is standing a little bit proud of the surface of the fabric. So there we have it. Death's head buttons, surprisingly quick and easy to make.